But tonight I got to move. Ain't got a thing to prove. Besides, when you left it alone, what could possibly go wrong?
Oh yeah!
Now, despite me harbouring a little bit of respect for the developers themselves, I have absolutely no respect for the game, and that's because it's a failure in almost every single way.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Defense of the Bad, a thing I started because...
Why? I'll tell you why. Because I am brave. Because I crave adventure. And because I'm a hero, for crying out loud. If that's a crime, then book me.
But in all seriousness, it is to defend bad games. This video was supposed to be a lot more ambitious, but because of me getting overwhelmed over my poor organization of the files and taking longer than I would have liked, I decided to go for a more simple, from my perspective view instead of a philosophical debate. Don't get me wrong, I would have liked to have a word-for-word rebuttal with the videos of the 3 YouTubers, but there were a lot of repeat arguments, and again, I was getting annoyed by my bad organization. But with that said, let's delve into the backstory of the game first!
What could possibly go wrong?
Development started in April of 1995 with a reported 5 employees on the new development team. The original system was rumored to be on the Sega 32X despite no evidence of it being in that state.
32X. But because of how bad the 32X did on the market, they eventually switched platforms to the PlayStation. Now, I have a sneaking suspicion that the reason why this game is so bad is because it was developed for one platform, then moved over to another, but I have no way to prove that.
There was a Sega Saturn port planned, but it ended up being cancelled. Michael Berlin, who didn't take part in the second and third game, returned to work on this game after Accolade asked for help. He said he would only do it if the game was in 3D. A notable feature of development was that the team didn't have a base to make a 3D game, causing them to figure out how to make this work. Another thing is that while at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas to demonstrate the Bubsy 3D beta demo, he noticed the Super Mario 64 demo. And after noticing, Michael wanted to start over, but because of the amount of money already put into the project, they continued to make the most of what they had. Aside from that, nothing much notable about the development other than compared to Super Mario 64 and Crash Bandicoot, they didn't have as much money or resources to put into the game.
For a lot of it, oh, here's a question. Did they come out with any kind of marketing for Bubsy 3D?
No.
Alright.
There was a reasonable amount of hype behind this game. EGM held many previews for it, but they understood the bar Bubsy would have to meet. Bubsy 3D is preparing to be released into a sea of red-hot competition.
What could possibly go wrong?
2 things: lack of explanation and a few certain enemies. A lot of this game either has mechanics that aren't explained, or rely on being explained in the manual a bit too much. Though the boss hints could have been next to the listed bosses, I'm just saying.
Okay, glad I read the manual, because I was about to say, like, wait a minute. Why doesn't he have a thing like Bugs, where he can sort of, well, Bugs Bunny from Bugs Bunny Lost in Time, where he can, like, carefully go across, like, things that can blow up or things that are really fragile. And apparently, I can land on these by gliding. So that is very good information to have, and that allows me to get over here and grab this. This is why you read manuals, children.
Well, let's check the manual.
There's a manual?
There's always a manual. People like you don't read them, but they're always there.
What's it say?
Then again, I mean, if you are a child and you are watching this, I hate myself, but you're growing up in an era that no longer has paper manuals. So you actually have to inconvenience yourself and, like, you know, go to the home menu or find, like, the e-manual of the game. Like, you know, depending on what system you're on. Please don't let me die like this. Not like this. Please. No. I'm begging you nicely. Thank you. But yeah, you know, you're growing up in that kind of era, and I don't know how to feel about that. I mean, I'm living the era, and I don't know, I'm kind of bitter. I like my paper manuals. I like looking at artwork and, you know, the notes section that nobody ever used whatsoever. You know, I like those things, I guess. I don't know. What am I looking at? Do I want to stay up top or do I want to go down below? I have no fucking choice! Oh, man. Oh, I forgot to count the 0. Okay.
What isn't so forgivable are 4 different enemies. Hummers. Screeches. Dogfish. And ripplers. Screeches are these blob-like enemies, or blob enemies I guess, that chase you around and can't be destroyed by normal means. This means that these fast-moving enemies are best dealt with by avoiding them as much as possible. Hummers might be even worse. Although you can defeat them, whenever you approach them, they attack without even a second for you to respond. In the water levels, the ripplers and the dogfish function more or less the same.
Another great render in the loading screen. I think it's supposed to be him finding Bubsy 3D in a stack of CDs and being like, Marco, Polo, Marco, Polo, Marco, Polo.
Delivery for Woozy. Hey, you be careful with that.
Look at how it looks. He was having some issues driving away, but I want a better motorcycle.
well, at least you have a way of knowing when enemies are nearby. You know how Zelda games often have this music change when there's an enemy close by? Bubsy does the same thing by adding a percussion track over the music. Oh my god, it's so annoying. It sounds like a buzzsaw drilling through sand or something, and it happens so frequently too. Every time you're near a woolly, which is more than half of the time, about as often as you're close to a Goomba in the original Super Mario Bros. Can you imagine nails on a chalkboard every time you're by a Goomba? That's Bubsy 3D.
Choir of kids that ate too many beans.
The dogfish could have been chasing Bubsy at a steady pace, while the ripplers had their own projectile attack. For Hummers, give 'em a wind-up! For Hummers, give 'em a wind-up!
Watch me paste this pathetic palooka with a powerful, paralyzing, perfect pachydermus percussion pitch.
And to make the Screengees defeatable.
What could possibly go
Then there are the visuals. Looking back at some of the first 3D games can make you realize that a lot of them have aged like crap. But Bubsy 3D looked terrible at the release, and you can tell that by comparing it to other games of the time. All of the character models are flat and uninteresting.
According to an interview with Mark Blank during when Bubsy 3D was 50% complete, the idea with the visuals was to create a style reminiscent of the old Warner Brothers cartoons with the simple angular shapes and colors. Combined with the fact that this takes place on an alien planet and you've got an argument here. With that said, there are more fair criticisms of the visuals of the game. One of the biggest fair complaints is that the visuals don't often match with the themes of the stages. During my Let's Play, when I first got to Runaway Woolly, I've noticed that while the music was an excellent Ghost Train theme, and the best song in the game perhaps, the game didn't quite convey that aside from the rocket cars. But the irony here is that there was already a rocket car themed level! So, using rocket cars here in substitute of trains doesn't quite work. While the greeting cards before each stage is nice, it might have been better to make ones that coincided with the themes of each stage better, or just gave the game more complex textures. You know.
I really don't understand why every level has a title card that parodies a movie. It made sense in Gex because the parodies were a constant thing throughout, even theming levels after different movies and genres, but there isn't a lick of that here, so I don't know why they even bothered.
On a personal note, the visuals, while simple, never felt like an eyesore with at least being bright and colorful. Plus, there's nothing wrong with a low poly look, as long as it's handled with at least some flair.
What could possibly go wrong?
The story isn't that much to go by. Bubsy has been kidnapped by the Woolies. The rocket carrying him breaks. He escapes and plans to return home with the rockets on the planet. Some have criticized the Woolies for being stupid in this scenario because of kidnapping instead of destroying Bubsy.
So, you are Bubsy Bobcat. The Woolies from the first game catnap Bubsy and bring him to their home planet, which sounds like that would be an absolutely terrible idea. Anyway, they find out he's collecting atoms and rocket parts and they have no idea why because logic doesn't exist on this planet and these things are natural resources.
All we know is that the creature's plan somehow revolves around collecting atoms and rockets. What it plans to do with these useless yet abundant natural resources, we have no idea.
I think the thing that makes me hate this the most is the fact that it goes out of its way to insult your intelligence. Like, it's one thing to say collect stuff in a platformer, but going out of your way to say that the Woolies are so stupid is just insulting. And that's all the story that we're getting until the very end of the game.
It should be noted that Bubsy mentions in the manual that they are stupid. Plus, if we look at this from a Warner Brothers angle again, this episode might have taken inspiration from the episode of Looney Tunes called The Hasty Hare, where Bugs Bunny is kidnapped and then outwits his captor.
Look, Doc, now don't get me wrong. It ain't that I don't want to go to Mars. It's just that I don't want to get mixed up in no mutiny.
You mean he against me?
Certainly. Don't tell me you haven't noticed that low criminal forehead.
Oh, mutiny makes me so angry. Let's have no more mutiny.
What infantile minds? How buck Rogers can you get? Mac, I don't like to seem ungrateful, but this jacket just ain't my size. Ain't you got something more sporty? Say in a size 26? Say, that's more like it. Here, help me slip out of this old one and I'll try it on. There. You know, I believe this is more your sort of thing. The total woodsy, outdoorsy kind. Everybody destroy ship! We've struck an iceberg and we're sinking fast! Here, get into this life preserver, quick!
Granted, the game didn't say that Bubsy outwitted the Woolies on the ship, but that might have been the intention. What's more criticized about the game is the ending. In particular, the quote-unquote good ending. In the good ending, the combined power of the rockets collected somehow causes Bubsy to travel back in time, allowing the Woolies to proceed with their invasion anyway.
But if you've got the patience of a saint, you're treated to a cutscene of Bubsy getting captured and the Woolies planning to invade Earth. Yeah, so even if you beat the game, you still lose.
The hairy fiend did not procure enough rockets to build a complete model.
To actually beat it, you gotta collect hidden rockets from each level. Then, Bubsy can officially escape. But his rockets enter a time shift and he ends up in the age of the dinosaurs, meaning the Woolies will still plan to invade Earth. Yep, it's a garbage ending to a garbage game.
It is understandable as to why some people would be upset by this, but it should be noted that a sequel to this game was planned at one point, or at least humored, at the very least. But it didn't happen because
Rayon's most renowned scientist, Professor Woody Nerdopowitz.
Ahem. Using the stored atom capacity he'd built up in his fur.
Now pay attention! This is important information! Please, Professor, continue.
Thank you, General. As I was saying, using the stored atom capacity he built up in his fur. Excuse me. Excuse me. Now then.
Turn the pizza around! It's stuffed crust, you eat it backwards! Carry on!
In case you forgot, you're supposed to eat stuffed crust backwards. With a ring of cheese baked right into the crust, it's the most fun you can have with the pizza. Right now, a large one topping is only $9.99. Pizza Hut, the best pizzas under one roof.
Would you like to work here? I'm not housebroken.
Therefore, no more quote-unquote furry animal products, end of quote. So the ending doesn't quite fail on its own merits because it was planned to have a sequel at some point. Though perhaps, especially in the retrospective view, it might have been better to just have an ending where Bubsy tricks the queens, manages to escape, and perhaps had found a way to prevent them from making an invasion for at least a little while.
Okay, I surrender. Here, take it.
Adieu, sucker! I'm rich! 90% record! I'm rich!
Gee, those northern lights are pretty this time of year.
What could possibly go wrong? What could possibly go wrong?
Bad day or what?
There aren't that many characters that speak in this game, but the character that appears to get all of the complaints is Bubsy himself. In one of her earliest roles, Lonnie Manila voices all of the characters in the game. While many do respect her vocal abilities, a lot don't like the high-pitched tone of Bubsy himself.
So there's one thing I'm immune to, it's incessant high-pitched nagging.
Where'd the high-pitched part come from? He just said annoying, but alright, fine. You know, his voice isn't that high-pitched.
While I couldn't find anything in particular as to why they had her voice the character, or even in her story in general as to how she got involved in this game, but the voice direction might be something to do with, again, the Warner Brothers tone they were going for. And a shame too, as Bubsy doesn't talk that much in the game to begin with.
Out of every game in the series, this is the one with the most annoying voice. Rob Paulson was a lot easier on the ears, and I do like his new voice from the new game. Some people even think it's Vic Mignogna, the guy who voices Edward Elric, and honestly, I hear it.
Guardball deprivation! That isn't what I said at all! Were you even listening to me?
But in Bubsy 3D, it was Lanny Minella who lent her voice. She's played Rouge the Bat, Luke Triton, and she's had smaller roles in hundreds of games. She's a good voice actor, but the direction here, well, I guess someone with a range as wide as hers, they were really able to get what they wanted out of her, but man, what they wanted is so hard to listen to.
Hey, what buttons did you press?
And you just have to listen to it. He never stops talking. He just goes on and on and on and... Shut up!
Now, most people who reviewed this game found the voice to be annoying and never ending in comments. The thing here is that when I was playing the game, Bubsy's quotes were always spread out to the point it wasn't quite worth complaining. Like, every so often he would speak, but even then it was very spread out that you kind of forget about it. Most of what Bubsy says is in the first level, but at least it was to inform the player of some mechanics. You want to see a character who never stops talking and being needlessly repetitive every 2 seconds?
Spirits.
Black Riders!
The reason for the on and off feature of Bubsy's voice was to appease those who did want to hear Bubsy speak and those who didn't want to hear Bubsy speak at the same time.
You can actually turn Bubsy's voice off in the options menu, and this leads me to believe that the developers knew that Bubsy's voice was annoying, but just thought of it as being a character trait. But it's a very unappealing character trait, and it should have been scrapped.
Look, a maroon convention!
In every single Bubsy game, Bubsy says a couple of lines that are comedic every so often, usually at the start of levels, sometimes when he dies, and in Bubsy 3D, that doesn't change. In fact, if anything, he speaks a heck of a lot more. Now, while a lot of people would consider that a negative, and believe me, I'm right there with you guys, I have to imagine that there's people out there that enjoy these comedic lines.
I knew I should have taken that left turn at Uranus! Was it something I said? What could possibly go wrong?
Now, I get it. His jokes are so bad. I mean, they're terrible. But hearing the jokes gives you something to look forward to in an otherwise completely devoid game of enjoyment. So there's something there to be said about having the ability to hear him say funny lines, I guess. So really, that's the first positive. He has a bunch of comedic dialogue.
As for the voice itself, it is fitting for Bubsy, but doesn't do much past the first stage.
What could possibly go wrong?
Alright, enough of Warner Brothers. Time for more about the game.
The way Bubsy moves introduces a whole new set of problems. Basic movement is done with tank controls, so pressing up will make Bubsy move forward, while pressing left or right will make him turn on the spot. While I argue that this control scheme can work with certain games, it just feels terrible here. The issue is that when you try and move forward and turn, Bubsy's turning circle is way too big, and you just constantly overshoot corners because of how slowly he responds. This also results in running straight into enemies even though you're pressing the right buttons to swerve past them. Bubsy also accelerates way too quickly and the levels aren't designed to be done fast, so I have no idea why they chose to make him so speedy. Because of the awkward turning and the fact he picks up speed so quick, the only way of making it through the game without constantly crashing into walls or enemies is to run forward, then stop, then turn on the spot, then move forward a bit more, but stop before Bubsy accelerates and runs into something, and then turn on the spot again when you come to a corner. It's ridiculous. I know this game was an early 3D platformer, and I'm reviewing this game after having played a ton of newer games that have mastered 3D movement, but come on, surely they could see that something was wrong here. That's not the end of our control problems though. On top of this, we also have a standard jump and a glide move. Why the hell a bobcat is able to glide through the air like this, I have no idea. I can honestly say I've never seen a cat do this in real life, but whatever. The issue with these jumps is that the camera violently tilts upwards whenever you jump, which is obviously supposed to give you a look at the floor so you can see where you're about to land. But the camera moves too quickly, and it's also way too extreme with how far it goes into the air. It stops you being able to see any projectiles in front of you, and in some cases it stops you from being able to see where a platform you jump into is positioned, so you just have to do a leap of faith.
Jumping is going to make the camera look down at the ground, which really isn't as disorienting as people really make it out to be. Honestly, it does really help make these jumps easier. The reason making jumps is so hard isn't because of this camera, it's because of the control. Bubsy feels really heavy. It's so easy to undershoot and to overshoot platforms. I kinda got a feel for it eventually, but throughout my entire playthrough, I would often have difficulty making jumps that in any other game would be incredibly simple. If it wasn't for that ledge grab move, I don't think I would have been able to get anywhere in this game.
The game consists of two main angles. The one behind Bubsy, and the one when he jumps. There's also extra camera control by
simply hold down the L button.
And moving around on the D-pad to look around. A lot of people don't like how the camera tilts down whenever Bubsy jumps, because they find it too The camera functions better than one might think. Here's the thing, while the controls may be a bit stiff, the jumping in the game has many uses. The jumping in this game makes it very easy to see what is below you. And when you're in the middle of jumping from platform to platform, the camera pans down just as you are approaching the platform. Again, while the controls might be stiff, nothing about the design of the game felt unreasonable for what you had to do. Except certain enemies, as I've mentioned before. The game could have made a button to change at 45 degree. Heck, if you get a good idea of the controls, you can do ninja maneuvers!
Bubsy can also use atoms, which are scattered all around the levels, as makeshift projectiles, which is actually an interesting idea that could have been expanded into a mechanic which separated Bubsy from other games at the time. But instead, it's just kind of pointless. It's way easier and quicker to just jump on enemies, and there's no enemies in the game that need to be eliminated in a specific way, so it's pretty useless using atoms. In fact, you can't even aim atoms vertically, and most enemies will be above or below you, so it's not possible to hit most enemies you come across like this regardless.
As for shooting atoms, they are not supposed to be vertical! This is best exemplified in Runaway Woolly, where there is an area that was designed in mind for horizontal-only shooting, or at least to show that this game only shoots horizontally. To get this rocket, you must find the Simon Says area. The 10 shots power-up appears next to the area where you're supposed to shoot the door open.
What could possibly go wrong?
While some might like the huge levels, many have criticized the level design for being way too open.
Did I even talk about the level design yet? Man, oh man, it is aimless as hell. Every level is a series of large open corridors separated by polygonal walls and a random assortment of generic floating platforms. I found myself getting lost in so many stages. The objective is simply to get to the end of the level, so I don't know why they decided to make it so open-ended. It's like they couldn't decide if they were making Crash Bandicoot or Mario 64, so they made Crash Bandicoot with Mario 64's level design. It doesn't work, and
this has caused many players to have gotten lost because they claim that everything looks the same and huge. Well...
Oh, look! An arrow! Aren't these game designers wonderful?
When I was playing Bubsy 3D, I would often use the arrows as a means of determining where I would need to go. However, that isn't the intended means to go through levels necessarily. Alternate paths would tend to contain many atoms for lives and hit points, extra lives, the floating heads, and even rockets. And the design is done to make sure that you would not be missing any rockets. Not only is the world open, but linear enough to where I never felt lost. Even when there were points where I might have been worried to lose a rocket, it was in an expected area.
What could possibly go wrong?
pretty reasonable loading times. It saves your lives as well as having a great save system, at least memory card-wise in the US.
Interestingly, Bubsy 3D also has no memory card support in the European release, and uses a password system instead.
When compared to Crash Bandicoot's save system, it was a bit weird. While yes, it did also have a memory card and password save system, what was weird about the memory card save system was that it kind of had like two save systems in one file, in a sense. Best described, when you beat the Tana bonus stages, it's like saving your level progress. When you collect a gem in Crash Bandicoot, it kind of saves your gem progress. If you were to beat a stage and had only collected a gem and quit the game, you would find yourself back a bit, to say the least. This would be most prevalent for players who are especially trying to 100% the game.
Like Parappa, I just gotta believe that I hit it. Please tell me I hit it. Yes! In your face! Yeah! Like a motherfucking boss, we did it. Yo! Okay. Woo! Woo. That was a thing? Alright, we did it. We did it. We did it. Katana token, yes indeed. Just occurred to me, if I really do stop here, I'm gonna have to do this level all over again. Not the worst thing in the world. And oh well, I screwed that up. Oh well. I can use that to my advantage though, because by not beating that Tana section, I do believe it will be available for me again when I come back through here. So that's good news. But now... Wow, okay. So I got a game over, huh? Alright, fair enough. Still gonna beat this level before I call it a day, though. I'm sorry, what? No. No. Why would you even do that? 17%. Load up. Was Naughty Dog high when they programmed this game? What?
And it lacks bugs and glitches.
What could possibly go wrong?
The game, of course, was none other than the infamous Bubsy 3D. This game released only weeks after Mario 64 and Crash, releasing to overwhelmingly negative press. They all hated Bubsy 3D, ripping right into it, giving it horrible scores.
Now, a lot of people like to say that everyone, including Michael himself, hated this game when it was first released. That is not true.
Whoa, he's so close. Back off, newsman.
Michael looked at the game fondly as a learning experience, and while there existed negative press about the game back then, there was also good press. What's even more, the game didn't even have a marketing budget besides being mentioned in gaming magazines.
There was a reasonable amount of hype behind this game. EGM held many previews for it, but they understood the bar Bubsy would have to meet. Bubsy 3D is preparing to be released into a sea of red-hot competition.
Perhaps to help their situation, they took some words from a positive preview of the game and tried to make the cover art flashier because they didn't have anything else.
This quote is instead from a preview from issue 88 before the game was even out. This right here is the exact page they took the quote from. Oh, what, you don't see it? Okay, let me help you out with that. Yeah, it was taken completely out of context, and it wasn't even taken from the actual game review.
The box art doesn't work. If you do a little digging, this EGM quote on the box is actually fake. The review is actually a negative review that they just took words out of context in order to give it a positive spin.
This quote is a dirty trick. It was taken from a magazine that hated this game and twisted into a vague bout of praise in order to sell this pile of garbage.
Make note that this is something that even movies do. In conclusion, this game is an okay game.
That was adequate.
And that's all, folks.
Level 3!